Have you ever really stopped to think about the invisible forces that shape our world? You know, the ones that decide what your phone costs, or what cars are available to buy, or even what your job prospects look like? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on all of that. We're diving into what's called international political economy, or IPE, to really understand the hidden political battles that define our lives.
So let's start with you. Just think about your day-to-day life for a second. That smartphone in your pocket? Chances are it was designed in one country, built in another, using parts from like half a dozen more. And the clothes you're wearing right now? Probably the same story. The global economy is literally all around us all the time. But is that always a good thing?
Look, there are two sides to this coin, right? On the one hand, globalization means we get lower prices on stuff and way more choices. That's a huge plus. But then the pandemic hit, and boy, did we get a crash course in the downside. Remember trying to buy a bicycle in 2020? Total nightmare. Or the crazy long waits for new cars because of chip shortages. That's the flip side. That's the vulnerability that comes with being so connected. We get all the benefits, but we also have to share all the risks.
And that right there, that constant trade-off between the good and the bad, that brings us to the absolute heart of international political economy. Because it's not just some neutral system of buying and selling. It's a battlefield. It's an ongoing political fight between the winners and the losers of all this global exchange.
So what is IPE officially? Well, think of it like a two-way street. It's the study of how political decisions, things like who we trade with or what we put taxes on, how those choices shape the entire global economy. And at the same time, how the global economy, with all of its winners and losers, turns around and shapes our politics.
And this is the part you really got to get. The source material makes it super clear that this isn't just some side topic. It's the central idea. Every single trade deal, every tariff, every international agreement, it all creates people who benefit and people who lose out. And the struggle between those groups, that's what IPE is all about.
Okay, enough with the abstract stuff. Let's make this real. We're going to look at a classic IPE fight that's been raging for decades, the battle over lumber between the US and Canada. It is a perfect example of this winner-loser dynamic in action.
All right, let's break this down. So it all starts with a political move. The US slaps a big tax, a tariff, on Canadian wood. Why? Because American lumber mills lobbied for it. They're the obvious winners here. Suddenly, they're shielded from their biggest competitor. But who loses? Well, American home builders and anyone trying to buy a house, because now wood is more expensive. And of course, the Canadian lumber companies lose a ton of sales. So what happens next? The fight begins. The losers start lobbying their governments to get the policy reversed or to hit back with their own tariffs. See the loop? Economics creates a political problem, which leads to a political solution that creates a new economic problem.
So to try and make sense of all these conflicts, people who study this stuff use a few different frameworks. But don't think of them as boring theories. Think of them as three different pairs of glasses, or lenses, that you can put on to see these global economic fights in a totally new light.
So, the first pair of glasses is called mercantilism. If you're a mercantilist, you see the world as one big competition between countries. The goal isn't just to make people rich, it's to make your nation powerful. The economy is basically a weapon for the state. It's all about protecting your own industries, selling more than you buy, and seeing trade as a zero-sum game. If they win, you lose.
Now, the second lens, liberalism, completely flips that idea on its head. Through this lens, the whole point of the economy is to make individuals better off, not the state. Liberals argue that free trade is actually a win-win. The idea is that if every country just focuses on what it does best and trades openly, everybody benefits. It's seen as a fundamentally cooperative, harmonious system.
And our third lens is Marxism. Now, a Marxist looks at the global economy and says the whole thing is fundamentally rigged. It's not a harmonious system at all, it's an exploitative one. It's defined by a constant, built-in conflict between the owners, the capital, and the workers, the labor. And on a global scale, that same conflict plays out between rich, powerful countries and poorer, developing ones.
This table really pulls it all together, laying these three worldviews out side by side. Just look at that first row. Most important actor. For mercantilists, it's the state. For liberals, it's you and me, individuals. And for Marxists, it's entire social classes. That one single difference changes everything that follows. How they see the world, what they think the government should do, and what the whole point of the global economy even is. So how did we even get the global economy we have today? I think it's really important to realize that this system didn't just pop up out of nowhere. Actually, you could say we're living in globalization 2.0. Let's do a quick flyby of the history to see how it all went down. Back in the 19th century, new tech like the steamship and the telegraph kicked off what we call the first wave of globalization. But that all came to a screeching, fiery halt between 1914 and 1945. With two world wars and the Great Depression, countries basically just slammed their borders shut. After all that devastation, the US and its allies got together at a place called Bretton Woods and intentionally designed a new system from the ground up, creating big institutions like the World Trade Organization and the IMF that still run the show today.
And that brings us right back to today. The incredible fragility of that system we built was put on full display during the pandemic. Just look at this chart. It shows the change in car production in 2020. See that? Almost every single line is pointing left, deep into negative territory. Production just tanked all across the world. It's such a powerful visual of how deeply interconnected and really how dependent on each other we've all become.
But wait, look closer. There's one little exception there, Taiwan. While pretty much everyone else's production was in freefall, theirs actually went up. Why? Well, because they are the world's leading producer of the one thing everyone suddenly desperately needed for their cars, semiconductor chips. It's a perfect modern-day example of how these massive global shocks create very, very clear winners and losers.
So understanding all this history and these different ways of seeing the world isn't just some academic exercise. It's more important right now than ever because the global economy that we've known for the last 80 years or so is facing a whole new set of massive, powerful challenges.
The source material really zeroes in on three huge tests for the system. First, you've got rising inequality inside of countries, which is fueling this populist backlash against the whole idea of globalization. Second, we're seeing the return of great power competition, especially between the US and China, which is turning old partners into new rivals. And third, the massive, overwhelming challenge of climate change is forcing us to rethink everything about how we produce, trade, and use energy.
And all of this brings us right back to that fundamental question we started with. The whole post-war global system was built on this big, liberal promise of prosperity for everyone. But as we face down these huge new challenges, the most important question that IPE forces us to ask is a tough one. In this ongoing global battle between winners and losers, who exactly is being left behind?